The fluorescent lights of St. Mercy Medical Center hummed with a sound that only Evelyn Blackwood seemed to hear. It was a low, persistent buzz like distant helicopter rotors. Constant. Grating. At 54, Evelyn had learned to tune out noise. The electrical hum, the meaningless chatter, the dismissive comments whispered just loud enough for her to catch. She moved through the hallways of the emergency wing with a peculiar economy of motion. To the casual observer, she was invisible. A heavy-set woman with steel gray hair pulled back into a severe practical bun. She looked like everyone's grandmother. Slow, harmless, forgettable. But if you watched her feet, you would notice something else. She made no sound. Her orthopedic shoes struck the linoleum without a squeak. She never bumped a gurney, never had to backtrack. She flowed through the space like water, finding the path of least resistance. Her hands were always busy, restocking supplies, checking crash carts, organizing equipment with a precision that bordered on compulsive. The young nurses thought it was sweet, the old supply lady keeping things tidy. They had no idea what they were looking at. It was 11:47 on a Tuesday night in late November. Outside the reinforced glass doors of the ambulance bay, the first snowflakes were beginning to fall. The weather reports had been apocalyptic all week. A polar vortex, historic storm system, 4 feet of snow predicted. The kind of blizzard that shut down entire states. Inside, the ER was unusually quiet. 3 patients, a drunk with a lacerated hand, a college kid with possible appendicitis, an elderly woman with chest pain already stabilized and waiting for cardiology. Dr. Nathan Prescott stood at the nurse's station scrolling through his phone. He was 32 years old, freshly minted from a prestigious fellowship in Boston, and he wore his credentials like armor. Brilliant, undeniably. Arrogant, absolutely. He had the emotional intelligence of a scalpel. Sharp, useful, and completely unaware of the damage it could cause. He didn't look up when Evelyn passed. She might as well have been furniture. Evelyn checked the crash cart in Trauma Bay 1. Someone had restocked it during the day shift, but she checked it anyway. She opened the drawers, counted the epinephrine auto-injectors, the intubation blades, the gauze, the tourniquets, everything was there. Everything was correct, but she added more anyway. 3 extra boxes of trauma dressings, 4 liters of saline, a box of combat tourniquets she had purchased herself hidden in the bottom of her locker. She tucked them into the lower cabinet behind the linens where no one would look. Just in case, she whispered to the empty room. The feeling had been building all day, a prickle on the back of her neck, a tightness in her chest that had nothing to do with her blood pressure. It was the same feeling she used to get in Fallujah, the feeling of air pressure changing before an IED detonated. Something was coming. She pulled out the old watch from her pocket. A Casio G-Shock Black, embittered, the strap worn thin. James had given it to her before their last deployment together. 20 years ago, the watch still kept perfect time. She checked it obsessively. 1,600 hours in her mind, even though the civilian world called it 4 p.m. Time had a different weight when you counted it in golden hours, in the 60 minutes between life and death. "Evelyn, can you help me with room 3? The voice belonged to Sophie Daniels, 23 years old, fresh out of nursing school, blonde ponytail, too much enthusiasm. She followed Evelyn around like a lost puppy, hungry for knowledge that the university couldn't teach. "What do you need?" Evelyn asked. Her voice was quiet, gravelly. The voice of someone who had learned that volume didn't equal authority. Sophie held up a tray of IV supplies, her hands shaking slightly. "The appendicitis case. Dr. Prescott wants a central line placed, but I've never done one without supervision, and he's busy with something else, and I don't want to mess it up." Evelyn took the tray, steadied it. "You'll do fine. Let me show you the landmarks." They walked together to room 3. The college kid was 19, scared. His name was Tyler. He had that look. The look of someone who thought he was invincible until his body proved otherwise. Evelyn positioned Sophie's hands, felt for the anatomical markers, explained the procedure in quiet, measured terms, not lecturing, just demonstrating. Sophie's hands stopped shaking. "You're sure I can do this?" Sophie whispered. "I'm sure," Evelyn said. "And I'll be right here." Sophie inserted the catheter. Perfect placement. First try. She looked up at Evelyn with something like wonder. "How did you learn to teach like that?" "Experience," Evelyn said. She peeled off her gloves, disposed of them, turned to leave. "Wait!" Sophie called after her. "Where did you work before here? What kind of nursing did you do?" Evelyn paused at the doorway. For a moment, something flickered across her face. A shadow, a memory, the sound of rotors, the smell of aviation fuel and blood. Different kind, she said. Long time ago. She walked away before Sophie could ask more questions. The automatic doors of the ambulance bay hissed open at 11:47. The sound of the sirens cut through the quiet like a blade. Everyone in the ER looked up. But it wasn't an ambulance. It was a black SUV, government plates. Two men in tactical gear hauled a gurney through the doors. On the gurney was a young soldier, maybe 19 years old, uniform torn, face pale, blood soaking through field dressings on his chest and abdomen. A lot of blood. Trauma Bay 1 now, doctor. Prescott shouted, suddenly animated. He jogged toward the bay, tablet in hand, already barking orders. The tactical team transferred the soldier onto the hospital gurney. The lead operator, a man with a gray beard and hard eyes, grabbed Prescott's arm. This didn't happen, the operator said. His voice was flat. Final. No paperwork. No records. He's not here. You understand? Prescott blinked. I need a medical history. I need to know what happened. What happened is classified. The operator released Prescott's arm. Keep him alive. That's all you need to know. The operators left. The doors hissed shut behind them. And suddenly Dr. Nathan Prescott was standing in Trauma Bay 1 with a dying soldier and no idea what to do next. His name is Private Dylan Fletcher, one of the residents said, reading the dog tags. Multiple GSW to chest and abdomen. BP is 60/40, heart rate 140, oxygen saturation 82%. Fletcher's chest rose and fell in shallow, desperate gasps. His lips were turning blue. His eyes rolled back. I need Prescott, started. He looked at the monitors, at the blood, at the too many variables. I need someone to call the attending. Where's the attending? Offsite, a nurse said. Storm, can't get back. Prescott's hands hovered over Fletcher's body. Indecision paralyzed him. Start with the chest or the abdomen. Control the bleeding or secure the airway. Too many options. Too many ways to choose wrong. Push 2 units O negative, he said. His voice cracked. Prep for intubation. Where's the rapid transfuser? A young nurse fumbled with the blood bags. Dropped one. It hit the floor with a wet slap. Prescott spun. Somebody call, he started, then stopped. Call who? There was no one else. Just him. Just this moment. Just this kid dying in front of him while the clock ticked down. In the corner of Trauma Bay 1, Evelyn Blackwood stood perfectly still. She had been restocking the supply cabinet when they brought Fletcher in. She watched Prescott freeze, watched the residents panic, watched Fletcher's oxygen saturation drop to 79%. 76, 73, she knew what came next. 70%, and the brain started dying. Her hands stopped moving, the supply cabinet forgotten. She closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. In that second, she heard the sound of helicopter rotors, felt the heat of an Iraqi sun, smelled aviation fuel and cordite and blood, heard a voice on the radio screaming, medevac down, medevac down. We have wounded. She opened her eyes. The woman who opened them was not the quiet supply nurse. She was someone else. Evelyn walked forward. Not fast, just inevitable. The same way an avalanche starts. Slow at first, then unstoppable. Dr. Prescott, she said. Her voice was different. Lower. Harder. The voice didn't ask. It commanded. Prescott didn't hear her. He was staring at Fletcher's chest, watching it rise and fall in that terrible, inadequate rhythm. Dr. Evelyn said again, louder. Step aside. Prescott looked up, saw her. The old nurse, the supply clerk, the invisible woman. Excuse me, he said. Ma'am, you need to leave the trauma bay. Evelyn didn't leave. She stepped closer, looked at Fletcher, looked at the monitors. Her eyes tracked everything in 2 seconds. Blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation, wound patterns, chest rise, tracheal deviation. She knew. His left lung has collapsed, Evelyn said. Tension pneumothorax. You have about 60 seconds to decompress it or his heart stops. Prescott blinked. How do you know that Evelyn didn't answer? She looked at Fletcher's neck. The trachea was deviated, shifted to the right. Classic sign. The collapsed lung was filling with air, creating pressure that crushed the heart in major vessels. Textbook case, if you were trained to see it. I can handle this, Prescott said, but his voice wavered. Please step back. Fletcher's monitor alarm shrieked. Oxygen saturation 68%, blood pressure 50/30. Evelyn made a decision. She had made this decision before. In a desert, in a city that burned. When the rules said wait for the surgeon and the situation said act now or watch him die. She stepped past Prescott, grabbed a pair of gloves from the dispenser, snapped them on. Get me a 14-gauge angiocatheter, she said. Not to Prescott, to the room, to anyone who would listen, Ma'am Prescott said. He reached for her arm. You're not authorized to perform medical procedures. You're a nurse, I'm a nurse, Evelyn agreed. And that kid has about 30 seconds before his heart stops. So either you decompress his chest or I will. Prescott's mouth opened, closed. He looked at Fletcher, at Evelyn, at the monitors screaming their warnings. He stepped aside, Sophie Daniels' hands shaking past Evelyn the orange-capped needle. 14 gauge, 2 inches long, designed to punch through skin and muscle and cartilage to reach the pleural space where air was trapped. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She palpated Fletcher's chest with her left hand, found the second intercostal space, midclavicular line, the anatomical sweet spot. Her fingers knew it by touch. She had done this procedure so many times the landmarks were mapped in her nervous system, in the back of helicopters while they banked hard to avoid ground fire, in shot-up buildings while mortars fell outside. Hold him still, she said. 2 residents grabbed Fletcher's shoulders. Evelyn positioned the needle perpendicular to the skin, aimed for the top of the 3rd rib to avoid the neurovascular bundle that ran beneath each rib's lower edge. She drove the needle in with controlled force. The resistance of skin, then muscle, then the distinctive pop of the parietal pleura. She advanced the catheter, withdrew the needle. The sound was immediate, a sharp pressurized hiss, like a tire deflating, the trapped air escaping through the catheter. Fletcher's chest expanded, a real breath. His oxygen saturation jumped. 72, 76, 80, 84. His lips turned from blue to pink. The monitor alarms quieted. Evelyn taped the catheter in place. Not the standard civilian tape job. She used a specific fold, quick, efficient, the kind that could be torn with your teeth if both hands were busy. She stepped back, stripped off her gloves, disposed of them. Fletcher took a deep, shuddering breath. His eyes fluttered open, confused, scared, alive. The trauma bay was silent. Every person in the room stared at Evelyn Blackwood, the quiet supply nurse, the invisible grandmother, the woman who had just performed a procedure that most civilian nurses would never attempt, and made it look routine. Dr. Prescott opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Where did you learn to do that, he finally asked. Evelyn looked at him. Her face was calm, blank, the mask settling back into place. A long time ago, she said. Different place. She walked out of the trauma bay, pushed her supply cart down the hallway, resumed her rounds, as if nothing had happened. Behind her, she heard the whispers start. Who is she? Did you see how fast she moved? That wasn't civilian technique. How does a night nurse know field trauma procedures? Evelyn kept walking. Her limp was slightly more pronounced now, the old shrapnel wound in her left hip acting up. It always did when the weather changed, when a storm was coming. She made it to the supply closet, closed the door behind her, stood in the dark among the shelves of gauze and saline and sterile instruments. Her hands were shaking. She looked down at them, rough knuckles, age spots, a jagged scar running across her left palm. That scar was 20 years old. Shrapnel from the helicopter crash. The same crash that killed James, the same crash that ended her career and started her long retreat into invisibility. Evelyn pressed her palms against her eyes, breathed, counted to 10. Used the technique the VAA therapist had taught her. Ground yourself. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear. She could hear the hum of the lights, the distant beeping of monitors, the wind picking up outside. The storm was here. She opened the closet door, stepped back into the hallway, and nearly collided with Sophie. The young nurse was standing right outside the closet, waiting. Her eyes were wide. Evelyn Sophie whispered, "What you just did in there. That was incredible." "It was necessary," Evelyn said. She moved to walk past. Sophie blocked her path, not aggressively, just desperately. "Please, I need to know. Where did you train? What kind of experience do you have?" Because that wasn't just nursing. That was something else. Evelyn looked at the young woman, saw her own face 25 years ago, hungry, eager, wanting so badly to be good enough to save everyone. "Experience doesn't matter," Evelyn said gently. "What matters is the kid is breathing." She walked away. Sophie called after her. "But everyone's talking. They're saying you might be in trouble. Dr. Prescott is talking to the administrator. They're saying you performed an unauthorized procedure." Evelyn didn't turn around. Let them talk. She made it to the nurse's station, sat down, opened a patient chart, pretended to read it. Her hands had stopped shaking. But the feeling on the back of her neck hadn't gone away. The feeling of incoming, of something building, of the universe holding its breath before the explosion. At 6:15 the next morning, Evelyn sat alone in the hospital cafeteria. She drank black coffee and watched the sunrise paint the Montana mountains gold and pink. Beautiful. Indifferent. The mountains didn't care about human drama. The cafeteria was nearly empty. A janitor mopping floors. A tired resident getting breakfast before rounds. And at a table across the room, 3 young doctors. They didn't know Evelyn was there. Or they didn't care. Their voices carried. Did you hear about last night the supply nurse who basically took over Dr. Prescott's trauma? Oh God, not another dinosaur who thinks they know better than the actual physicians. She literally pushed him aside and performed a needle decompression. That's insane. She could have killed the patient. These old nurses, they're a liability. One wrong move and we're all sued. Prescott should have reported her immediately. There are protocols for a reason. Evelyn took another sip of coffee. The bitterness didn't bother her anymore. She had learned to like bitter things. They were honest. She stood, carried her tray to the disposal area, walked past the young doctor's table. They didn't look up. She was invisible again. Evelyn made it to the locker room, changed out of her scrubs, into jeans and a heavy flannel shirt. She was pulling on her boots when the door opened. The woman who entered was not a nurse. She was administrative staff, press suit, tablet computer, the kind of efficiency that came from MBA programs and corporate seminars. Ms. Blackwood. The woman's voice was polite but cold. Mr. Hartford would like to see you in his office. Now please. Evelyn nodded, finished lacing her boots, followed the woman down the hallway. Vincent Hartford's office was on the 3rd floor, corner office. Large windows overlooking the parking lot and the mountains beyond. The desk was covered in corporate efficiency charts, patient satisfaction scores, cost reduction strategies, the vocabulary of modern healthcare administration. Hartford was 58, expensive suit, thinning hair, the kind of man who had spent his entire career climbing ladders and was terrified of falling off. He didn't offer Evelyn a seat. Ms. Blackwood, he said. He didn't look at her. He looked at his tablet. Last night, the trauma in Bay 1, Dr. Prescott has filed a report. Evelyn said nothing. According to his report, you physically pushed him aside. You performed a medical procedure that you are not credentialed to perform in this facility, a procedure that carries significant liability risk. The patient survived, Evelyn said quietly. That's not the point. Hartford finally looked up. His eyes were tired, afraid. This hospital is already facing 3 malpractice lawsuits. The board is looking for any reason to cut costs, to reduce liability. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understand, Evelyn said. You're 54. Hartford continued. He had her personnel file open on the tablet. You're part-time. You don't fit our demographic. The board wants younger staff, tech-savvy, social media friendly, people who can represent the modern face of healthcare. I do my job, Evelyn said. Your job is what I define it as, Hartford said. And right now your job is to stay in your lane. Stock supplies. Support the medical staff. Do not under any circumstances attempt to practice medicine. Am I clear? Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him, saw a man protecting his pension, his position, his comfortable life. Saw a man who had forgotten that healthcare was supposed to be about saving lives, not managing risk. Crystal clear, sir, she said. Good, Hartford said. He closed the file. I'm not firing you. Yet. But consider this an official warning. One more incident like last night and you're done. Understood? Understood. You can go. Evelyn turned to leave, and Blackwood Hartford called after her. I need you to understand something. This isn't personal. It's business. We live in a litigious society. Every unauthorized action is a lawsuit waiting to happen. I have to protect this hospital. Of course, Evelyn said. She walked out, closed the door quietly behind her, took the elevator down to the ground floor, walked across the parking lot to her truck. The truck was a 1997 Ford F-150. Primer gray, dented, reliable. It started on the first try. It always did. She had learned a long time ago that the things that lasted were the things you maintained, the things you cared for, the things you didn't take for granted. She drove home. Home was a small apartment on the east side of town. 1 bedroom, barely furnished, everything neat, everything in its place. The bed made with hospital corners, the kitchen counter clean, the living room sparse. On the mantel above the electric fireplace, there were exactly 4 photographs. The first, a wedding photo, Evelyn at 32, younger, laughing, wearing a simple white dress, Beside her, Captain James Blackwood in his dress uniform. Tall, handsome, that particular confidence that came from being a helicopter pilot, from believing you could fly through anything. The second A Ranger unit photo. Evelyn in flight gear, standing with her medevac crew, 4 faces, 3 of them still alive. The fourth James smiling with his arm around her shoulders. Iraq 2003, before Fallujah, before everything burned. The third Evelyn receiving the Silver Star. Formal ceremony, her face blank, hands at her sides, the medal being pinned to her chest while she stared straight ahead. Seeing nothing, feeling nothing. The medal felt like an accusation, the fourth James's funeral. Arlington National Cemetery, flag-draped coffin. Evelyn in black, standing alone, not crying, just standing. Because some grief was too big for tears. Evelyn stood in front of the mantle for a long time. She picked up the wedding photo, traced James's face with her finger. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." She put the photo back, walked to the kitchen, made coffee she didn't drink, stared out the window at the snow beginning to fall. The phone rang at 3:15 that afternoon. Evelyn had been asleep. She worked nights, slept days, or tried to. Sleep was difficult. It had been difficult for 20 years. The dreams always came, the sound of the helicopter going down, the screaming of hydraulics failing, the smell of burning fuel, the feeling of heat, of the cockpit door that wouldn't open no matter how hard she pulled. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was rough from sleep. Blackwood. The voice on the other end was military, professional, official. "Chief Warrant Officer Blackwood, this is Colonel Hayes, Joint Special Operations Command. I'm calling about an incident last night involving Private Dylan Fletcher." Evelyn sat up. Her heart rate didn't change. Years of training. Stay calm, process, respond. "I'm retired, sir," she said. "It's just Ms. Blackwood now. I'm aware of your status," Hayes said. "But Private Fletcher is asking for you specifically. He says you saved his life. He says you have the look, the bearing. He wants to know if you're Ranger qualified." Evelyn closed her eyes, opened them. "What do you need?" Colonel Hayes was silent for a moment. Then Fletcher was part of a classified operation, an operation that went catastrophically wrong. Someone fed his unit false intelligence, changed their coordinates, walked them directly into an ambush. 3 dead, 5 wounded. Fletcher survived. Barely. "I'm sorry to hear that," Evelyn said. "But I don't understand why you're calling me." "Because someone tried to kill him last night," Hayes said. His voice was flat, final, in his hospital room. 30 minutes after you saved him in the ER. An unknown individual gained access to his room, attempted to inject succinylcholine into his IV line. The attempt was interrupted by a nurse making rounds. The individual fled. Evelyn stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the falling snow. "Military training," she said. "Excuse me, whoever tried to kill Fletcher. They had military training. Succinylcholine is the professional's choice. Mimics natural cardiac arrest, untraceable if it works. That's not civilian knowledge." "Correct," Hayes said, "which is why I'm calling you. Fletcher is being moved to a secure location. High-value witness protection. He has evidence of a defense contracting fraud scheme. $2 billion. Goes all the way to Congress. If he testifies, a lot of powerful people go to prison. If he dies, the investigation collapses. And you need medical support," Evelyn said. "I need someone I can trust," Hayes said. "Someone with field experience. Someone who can keep Fletcher alive while we figure out who burned his unit. Someone who won't panic when things go bad. Someone who understands that this mission doesn't exist." Silence on the line. "Your hospital can't know," Hayes continued. "Your administrator can't know. This is off-book, unofficial. You'll be operating in a legal gray area. If something goes wrong, I can't protect you. Are you willing to accept those terms?" Evelyn looked at the photographs on her mantle, at James's face, at the woman she used to be. "When do I start?" she asked. "Tonight," Hayes said. "There's a safe house, Old V, a hospital wing, abandoned. Fletcher is already there with 2 MPs. I need you there by 1800 hours. I'll send you the address." "Understood," Blackwood, Hayes said. His voice softened slightly. "I read your file. I know what happened in Fallujah. I know what you lost. I know you've spent 20 years trying to disappear. But right now, I need the woman from that file. I need Reaper. Can you be her again?" Evelyn looked at her hands. They were steady. "I can try, sir. That's all I'm asking." And Chief Fletcher mentioned something else. He said one of the soldiers in his unit before he died kept saying a name. Kavanaugh, Russell Kavanaugh, Said if anything happened, find Kavanaugh. He knows the truth. Mean anything to you? Evelyn's breath caught. Bear Kavanaugh, 2nd Platoon, Fallujah 2004, one of the 8 men she pulled from that kill zone. Yes, sir, she said quietly. I know Kavanaugh. He's solid. If he says there's truth to find, there is. Good, I'll keep you posted. The line went dead. Evelyn stood in her living room. The snow was falling harder now. The weather reports had been right. Historic storm. 4 feet predicted. The kind of blizzard that isolated everything. That cut off roads. That turned the world into a white void. Perfect conditions for someone to make a move. Perfect conditions for violence. She walked to her bedroom closet, pushed aside the civilian clothes, reached into the back. Her fingers found what they were looking for. A black duffel bag. Military issue. She hadn't opened it in 20 years. She pulled it out, unzipped it. Inside, her old flight suit. Faded. Patches removed. But still there, her medic kit. Civilian supplies had replaced most of the military-specific gear, but the organization was the same, reaching for the right tool in the right pocket without looking, and at the bottom of the bag, wrapped in oilcloth, the one thing she had promised herself she would never need again, her old dog tags. Blackwood Evelyn M., OPOS Chief Warrant Officer Medevac. She held them in her palm. The metal was cold, the edges worn smooth from years of wear, from years of flying missions, of pulling wounded soldiers out of hell, from the day James gave them back to her after the crash. The only thing that survived the fire. Evelyn closed her fist around the tags. She had a decision to make. She could ignore Hayes's call, stay invisible, stay safe, stock her supplies, live her quiet life, let someone else handle Fletcher, let someone else be the hero, or she could remember who she used to be, before the crash, before the guilt. Before she decided that the world was better off if Evelyn Blackwood just disappeared. She looked at the wedding photo one more time. James was smiling. He always smiled, even when he was scared, even when the mission was impossible. He used to say that fear was just information. Data. You acknowledged it. Then you flew anyway. What would you do? She whispered to the photo. But she already knew the answer. James would fly. Evelyn put the dog tags around her neck, felt the weight settle against her sternum. The weight she hadn't felt in 2 decades. The weight, of responsibility, of duty, of being someone who ran toward the fire instead of away from it. She changed clothes, pulled on cargo pants, a black tactical shirt, her old flight jacket. It still fit, barely. She packed the medic kit, added supplies from her personal stock, the combat tourniquets, the hemostatic gauze, the chest seals, the tools of her old trade. She loaded the duffel into her truck. She checked the address Hayes had sent, and at 1700 hours, Evelyn Blackwood drove into the gathering storm. The safe house was exactly where Hayes said it would be, the abandoned wing of the old VA hospital, the part that had been shut down due to budget cuts, the part where the government warehoused the damaged. The forgotten, the men who came home broken and never quite healed. Appropriate, Evelyn thought. 2 military police officers stood at the entrance, young, professional. They checked her ID, verified her with a phone call to Hayes, opened the door. Inside the hallway smelled of disinfectant and decay. Fluorescent lights flickered. Half of them were dead. The floor was clean but worn. Everything about the space screamed abandonment. Fletcher was in room 147, end of the hall. The MPs had positioned themselves outside, one at the door, one at the nurse's station with a clear line of sight. Good positioning, Evelyn noted. Someone had military training. She knocked once, entered. Private Dylan Fletcher looked worse in person than he had in the ER. 19 years old, pale, scared. His chest was bandaged. IV lines running into both arms, monitors beeping a steady rhythm. Alive, but fragile. He saw Evelyn. His eyes widened. You, he said. You're the one. From the hospital. Evelyn set down her duffel, pulled on gloves, began her assessment, checking vitals, wound dressings, IV sites. All business. How are you feeling, she asked. Scared, Fletcher said honestly. They're trying to kill me, our own people. The mission was supposed to be routine, milk run, transport documents from the embassy to the base. But someone changed our route. Someone fed us bad coordinates. We drove straight into a kill box. He paused. His voice broke. Martinez, Kowalski, Thompson, all dead. Sergeant Kavanaugh took shrapnel to the head. Last I saw, he was unconscious. I don't know if he made it, and I only survived because I played dead until they left. Evelyn's hands paused for just a second at the name. Kavanaugh. Bear was in Fletcher's unit, was part of this. The conspiracy ran deeper than she thought. Kavanaugh's tough Evelyn said quietly, "If anyone could survive, it's him." "You know him?" Fletcher asked. "A long time ago," Evelyn said. She continued her assessment. "Tell me about the shooter. In your hospital room." Fletcher's voice shook. "I woke up, felt wrong, like someone was there. I couldn't see him. Too dark, but I felt him. Felt the IV line move. I hit the call button. Shouted. He ran. When the nurse came, she found a syringe. Plugged into my IV port. The doctor said it was succinylcholine. Said if he'd pushed the plunger, I'd be dead." Evelyn nodded. "Professional work. Inside knowledge. Whoever sent him had access to your medical records. Knew which room. Knew the shift schedule. Knew how to bypass security." Fletcher started crying. Not sobbing, just silent tears running down his face. "They're going to kill me. I have the documents, the evidence. If I testify, everyone goes down. Congressmen, generals, defense contractors, $2 billion in fraud. But if I die, it all disappears." Evelyn finished her assessment, sat down in the chair beside the bed, looked Fletcher in the eyes. "You're not going to die," she said. Her voice was quiet. "Absolute. I've got you. How can you promise that?" Fletcher whispered. "You don't even know me." Evelyn looked at him. Saw a kid, saw all the kids she had pulled out of burning vehicles, out of collapsed buildings, out of the wreckage of missions gone wrong. Saw James's face superimposed over Fletcher's. Young, brave, terrified. "Because it's what I do," she said. "I keep people alive when everything is trying to kill them. That's my job. It's always been my job." Fletcher searched her face. "Who are you, real?" Evelyn stood, walked to the window, looked out at the snow falling harder now. The storm was here. The roads would be impassable soon. The hospital isolated. Perfect conditions for what came next. She turned back to Fletcher. "A long time ago, she said I was someone else. Someone who flew into the worst places in the world and pulled people out. I was good at it, until the day I wasn't. Until the day I couldn't save the person who mattered most." She touched the dog tags under her shirt, felt the metal warm against her skin. "I've spent 20 years trying to forget that person," Evelyn continued. "Trying to be small, safe, invisible. But tonight, Colonel Hayes asked me to remember. So that's what I'm doing. I'm remembering." "Who were you?" Fletcher asked. Evelyn looked at him, and for the first time in 20 years, she said the name out loud. "They called me Reaper," she said, "and nobody died on my watch." Outside, the wind picked up. The snow fell harder. The storm surrounded the old hospital like a siege. And somewhere in the darkness, someone was coming. But inside room 147, Private Dylan Fletcher closed his eyes. And for the first time since the ambush, he slept. Because Reaper was watching, and Reaper didn't lose. The phone in Evelyn's pocket vibrated at 5:47 p.m. She was sitting in the corner of room 147 watching Private Dylan Fletcher sleep. The kid's vitals were stable, blood pressure holding at 100/70, heart rate steady at 82, oxygen saturation 96%. The chest wound was healing. He would live, if they could keep him alive long enough. The text was from Colonel Hayes. 3 words. "MPS compromised. Evacuate now." Evelyn's blood went cold. She stood, moved to the window, looked out at the parking lot through the falling snow. The 2 MPs who were supposed to be guarding Fletcher were gone. Their vehicle still there, but no movement, no signs of life. She pulled her sidearm from the medic bag. A Sig Sauer P320. She had kept it all these years, maintained it, practiced with it once a month at the range, just in case the past ever caught up. It had. She moved to Fletcher's bedside. The kid's eyes opened. Groggy, confused. "What's happening? We're leaving," Evelyn said. She disconnected his IV with practiced efficiency, pulled the chest tube, taped the wound. Fast, clean. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Then we walk. Now." She helped him up, wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. They moved to the door. Evelyn checked the hallway through the small window. Empty. Too empty. The fluorescent lights flickered. The building felt wrong. The air pressure had changed. Incoming. They made it to the service exit, out into the cold. The blizzard was intensifying, snow falling in thick curtains, visibility dropping to 20 feet. The wind cut through clothing like knives. Evelyn's truck was 50 yards away, might as well have been a mile. They ran. Fletcher stumbled, his chest wound protesting. Evelyn caught him, kept moving. 30 yards. 20. 10. A figure stepped out from behind a van. Not military. Contractor. Black tactical gear. Suppressed weapon raised. Professional. Calm. The kind of man who killed for money and slept fine afterward. He raised the gun. Evelyn shoved Fletcher behind her, raised her own weapon, fired first. The contractor's head snapped back. He went down, dead before he hit the snow. Another appeared, then another. 3 total. They had been waiting, watching, knowing she would run. Evelyn fired, moved, used the vehicles for cover. She wasn't a soldier, wasn't trained for gunfights, but she had been shot at before. In Fallujah, in Ramadi. You didn't forget how fear felt, how to move when bullets were close, how to make yourself small, how to keep breathing. She dropped the second contractor. Center mass, 2 rounds. The third one was better, smarter. He used cover, advanced tactically, fired controlled bursts that forced Evelyn to stay down. Fletcher was on the ground, crawling toward the truck, bleeding again. The chest wound reopened from exertion. The third contractor saw him, adjusted aim. Evelyn didn't think. She stepped out from cover, exposed, drew his fire. The contractor's rounds snapped past her head, close enough to feel the displacement. She fired back. 4 rounds, fast. The last one caught him in the throat. He went down choking. Evelyn grabbed Fletcher, threw him in the truck, started the engine, drove. The tires spun in the snow, caught. The truck lurched forward. She floored it, fishtailed out of the parking lot onto the access road. Where are we going? Fletcher gasped. His chest wound was bleeding through the blanket. Bright red, arterial, somewhere they won't look, Evelyn said. She pulled out her phone, one hand on the wheel, one hand dialing, the truck sliding on ice. She corrected. Kept driving? Sophie answered on the second ring. Evelyn, what's wrong? You sound out of breath. I need you to do something, Evelyn said. Her voice was steady despite the adrenaline. And you can't ask questions. Can you do that? Sophie hesitated. Then, yes, what do you need? There's a storage unit. Unit 347 at Mountain View Storage. Key is taped under the driver's seat of my truck. Inside is a medical cache, full surgical kit, blood products, everything. You need to get there, get the supplies, bring them to the old VA wing, the abandoned section. You understand, I understand. And Sophie, this is important. Don't tell anyone. Not Prescott, not Hartford, no one. This stays between us. Okay, but Evelyn, what's happening? I'm saving someone's life, Evelyn said. Same as always. She hung up, looked at Fletcher. The kid was pale, shocky, losing blood fast. You're going to be okay, Evelyn said. I'm taking you somewhere safe, somewhere they'd never think to look. She drove through the building storm, took back roads, avoided main highways. The visibility was near zero. The truck's headlights carved a tunnel through white nothing. She drove by feel, by memory, by the instinct that had kept her alive in worse places. 20 minutes later, she pulled into the parking lot of St. Mercy Medical Center. Fletcher stared through the windshield. The hospital, you're hiding me in a hospital. In the part they forgot about, Evelyn said. The abandoned VA wing. No cameras, no staff, no electronic records. No one goes there. It's invisible. Like me. She parked in the far lot, away from the main entrance. Helped Fletcher out. He was fading, blood loss and shock. She needed to move fast. They entered through a service door. Evelyn's keycard still worked. The system hadn't been updated in years. She supported Fletcher's weight, half-carried him through the connector hallway, into the old wing, down the corridor to room 147. Different room, same number. Coincidence or fate? She got Fletcher into bed, started a new IV, saline running wide open, assessed the chest wound. The bleeding was slowing. Good. Not arterial after all, just looked like it. The wound had torn, but not catastrophically. Sophie arrived 23 minutes later, breathless, carrying 2 duffel bags of medical supplies. Her eyes were wide when she saw Fletcher. Oh my God, she whispered. Who is he? What's happening, Walter, Evelyn said. She was already pulling supplies from the bags. Right now, I need you to stay with him. I have to go back to the main hospital. My shift starts in 7 minutes. I need to be there. Need to clock in. Need to be visible. So no one suspects he's here. You want me to stay alone with him? Evelyn looked at her, really looked, saw the fear, saw the doubt, but also saw the courage underneath. You can do this, Evelyn said. Monitor his vitals. If the bleeding increases, apply pressure. If he stops breathing, call me immediately. Otherwise, just keep him calm. Keep him quiet. Can you do that? Sophie swallowed hard, nodded. Yes, I can do that. Good girl, Evelyn said. She squeezed Sophie's shoulder. I'll be back, 2 hours maximum. You're not alone. I'm right upstairs. She left, walked through the connector hallway into the main hospital, changed into clean scrubs, washed the gunpowder residue from her hands, tied her hair back, became invisible again. She clocked in at 18:57 hours. 3 minutes early, and 47 minutes later, the red emergency phone rang. Evelyn was at the nurse's station, updating charts, playing her role, the quiet supply nurse, harmless, forgettable. The phone's shrill ring cut through the quiet like a blade. She picked it up on the second ring. St. Mercy ER nurse Blackwood. The voice was male. Professional. Urgent. County dispatch. Mass casualty incident. National Guard convoy. 18 personnel. Multiple vehicle rollover on Highway 287. Multiple traumas. Blunt force. Lacerations. Possible internal injuries. Your facility is the closest. We're rerouting all units to you. ET, 12 minutes. Evelyn's mind raced. She had Fletcher hidden in the old wing, under Sophie's care. The contractors didn't know he was here. They thought he was at the original safe house. Thought he was dead or running. She had time, enough time to handle this crisis, to save these 18 soldiers, then get back to Fletcher. How many ambulances, she asked. None, the dispatcher said. Roads are too bad. They're coming in National Guard trucks. Heavy vehicles, they can push through, but it's going to be rough. Prepare for mass casualty protocol. Understood, Evelyn said. She hung up, looked around the ER. Dr. Prescott was in the physician's lounge. 3 nurses on duty. 2 orderlies. No attending. No backup. 18 casualties. 4 trauma bays. 1 surgeon. The math didn't work, but the math never worked. That was the job, making impossible math add up through sheer will and competence. She walked to Prescott's lounge, knocked once, entered. Doctor, she said, we have incoming 18 casualties, National Guard convoy, ET, 10 minutes. Prescott looked up from his phone. His face went pale. 18 multiple traumas, blunt force, highways closed. We're the only hospital they can reach. We need to activate disaster protocol, Prescott said. He stood, paced. We need backup. We need the attending. We need to prepare, Evelyn interrupted gently. The backup isn't coming. The roads are closed. We're it. Prescott's breathing quickened. The same look from the night before, the look of a man staring at an impossible problem. But this time Evelyn didn't let him freeze. Doctor, she said. Her voice was calm, firm. You're going to be okay. We're going to do this together. But I need you to stay with me. Can you do that? Prescott looked at her, saw something in her eyes, something steady, something that said, I've done this before. I've seen worse. We can handle this. He took a breath, nodded, yes. Yes, I can do that, good, Evelyn said. Now let's prep the bays. They had 11 minutes. Evelyn used every second. She pulled extra crash carts into position, set up triage stations, organized color-coded tags. Green for walking wounded, yellow for urgent but stable, red for immediate, black for the ones beyond saving. She prepped IV stations, pulled extra supplies, the combat tourniquets from her personal stock, the trauma dressings, the chest tubes. Everything she had hidden away for the moment she hoped would never come. But it had come. The sound reached them before the sight did. Diesel engines, heavy, powerful. The growl of military vehicles pushing through the storm. The headlights appeared through the snow. Not the clean lights of ambulances. These were rough, industrial, military, National Guard trucks. The automatic doors hissed open. The wind roared in, snow swirled across the clean linoleum floor. And then the casualties began to arrive. Not on gurneys, not in orderly lines. They came in a flow. Paramedics and firefighters stumbled through the doors, half carrying soldiers in torn uniforms. Walking wounded soldiers dragged their unconscious comrades. The smell hit immediately. Diesel fuel, wet wool, copper blood, the sharp scent of fear. Help someone help him, a young soldier, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, dragging a limp body in digital camouflage. He can't breathe. Please, over here, another voice. Compound fracture, bones through the skin. Doctor, this one's not responding. The small ER transformed instantly from a sterile medical facility into a combat casualty collection point. Bodies on the floor. Bodies in chairs, soldiers groaning, screaming. The ones who made no sound at all, those were the ones Evelyn watched. The silent ones were either dead or close enough that the difference didn't matter. Dr. Prescott stood in the center of the chaos. He spun, looked at a soldier with a leg bent at an impossible angle, turned to a man clutching his abdomen, turned again to a soldier with a head wound. Too many, too fast. His eyes started to glaze. Evelyn saw it happening, the vapor lock, the brain shutting down under cognitive overload. She couldn't let him freeze. Not this time. Not with 18 lives hanging in the balance. She stepped into the center of the room, took a breath, and let the mask fall away completely. Listen up. The voice that came out of Evelyn Blackwood was not the voice of the quiet supply nurse. It was the voice of Chief Warrant Officer Blackwood, flight medic, Ranger qualified, the voice that used to cut through the sound of rotors and gunfire and dying men, the voice that commanded, that saved lives. The room went silent. Every person turned to look at the gray-haired woman standing in the center of the blood-streaked floor, standing like she owned the space. Like she had done this 1,000 times before. "If you can walk," she barked, pointing to the north wall, "get against that wall." Now the walking wounded moved. Instinct. Military training. When someone speaks with that voice, you obey. 8 soldiers formed a ragged line against the wall. Sophie Evelyn snapped. Her finger stabbed toward the young nurse who had just returned from checking on Fletcher. "Get those men seated. Check pupils. Control active bleeding. Anyone with bright red blood gets pressure, and you call for me." Sophie nodded, moved to comply. Evelyn turned to the orderlies. "Dave, Mike, pressure control. Any wound spurting blood, you put a knee on it. You don't lift, you don't peek, you hold." "Clear, huh?" "Clear." Evelyn spun to the paramedics, stopped their overlapping shouts with a raised hand. "Stop, one at a time. Vitals and injuries, rapid fire." "You," she pointed. "Start, Private Cooper, 19 chest trauma, respirations labored. BP 90 over 60, pulse 120, Bay 3. Next, Sergeant Miller. Compound tib-fib, open wound, bleeding controlled, vitals stable. Bay 1. Next. The reports came. Evelyn sorted them in her head. The ancient calculus of triage. Who needed intervention now? Who could wait? Who would die regardless? She had done this before, in worse conditions, with fewer resources. You made choices, you lived with them. And then she turned to Dr. Prescott. He was still standing, still processing, but not frozen. Not yet. "Dr. Prescott," she said. Her voice was quieter now. "Direct. You're taking the worst airway to OR. Intubate. Stabilize, then come back. We need you moving." Clear. Prescott blinked. The direct order broke through. "Yes, clear." "Then move," Evelyn said. He moved. Evelyn turned back to the room, to the 18 broken men, to the terrified staff. "My name is Evelyn," she said. The room was listening, and nobody dies on my shift. The ER transformed into controlled chaos. Evelyn moved through the wounded like a force of nature. She knelt beside Private Cooper, ripped his shirt open, placed her stethoscope. Left side silence, right side breath sounds. Trachea deviated right. Another tension pneumothorax. But this time she didn't explain, didn't demonstrate, just fixed it. 14-gauge needle appeared in her hand. Sophie had learned to anticipate. Evelyn found the landmark by touch, inserted. The hiss of escaping air. Cooper gasped. Color returned. Next patient, Sergeant Miller. The compound fracture, bone jutting through skin. Evelyn called for traction splint. Aligned the fracture. The bone slid back beneath the skin. Miller screamed, then passed out. Better. Next, Corporal Hayes. Abdominal trauma, rigid belly, possible splenic rupture. Evelyn tagged him red. Urgent for OR. Next, she worked. The staff worked around her. Sophie gained confidence with each patient. The orderlies followed instructions without question. Even Prescott, when he emerged from OR, moved with new purpose. The system worked because someone was leading it. And across the room, sitting against the wall with the walking wounded Sergeant Russell Cavanaugh, watched. Bear Cavanaugh was 45 years old, 23 years Army, Rangers. He had deployed more times than he could count, seen things that lived in the dark corners of his mind. He had a concussion. Took a hit when the convoy rolled. Everything was blurred, foggy, but he could see the gray-haired nurse moving through the wounded, and something about her was wrong. Not wrong, familiar. The way she moved, economy of motion. No wasted energy, the way she prioritized. The way she worked with ruthless efficiency. He had seen that before. Somewhere bad. Bear watched her tape a chest catheter. Saw the specific technique. Quick. Efficient. The kind flight medics learned. He blinked through the concussion fog. Tried to focus. "Who is she?" he asked the soldier next to him. "That's Evelyn Blackwood," the soldier said. "Night nurse. She's old, but damn, she can work," Blackwood Bear repeated. The name rolled around in his injured brain. He knew that name. He watched her reduce a dislocated shoulder, saw the military technique, the confident rotation. The shoulder popped back. Bear had seen that exact move before. In a desert, in a burning city. Fallujah. The memory hit like a frag grenade. Second platoon, pinned in a market. RPGs, small arms. The medevac came, took an RPG, spun out, crashed. Everyone on that bird died, except one. The flight medic crawled out, ran toward the gunfire, towards second platoon, worked on them for hours, saved 8 men, including Bear. He never saw her face clearly, just her hands, her voice, her absolute refusal to let them die. They called her Reaper, and she had a scar. On her left hand, shrapnel. Bear looked at the nurse across the room, at the scar on her left hand, at the way she moved, at the watch on her wrist. Military issue. Blackwood. Chief Warrant Officer Evelyn Blackwood. It was her. Bear tried to stand. The room spun, the concussion making everything tilt. He grabbed the wall. He had to know, had to confirm. But before he could move, a new crisis erupted. Corporal Hayes, the abdominal patient, started screaming. Not pain, terror. "I can't breathe. Something's wrong." Evelyn was there in seconds. "What's wrong?" "My chest. I can't. It's crushing me." Evelyn looked at his face, pale, sweating, but not cyanotic. Oxygen saturation 94%. Not respiratory distress. She looked at his neck. Veins distended, bulging. She placed her stethoscope. Heart sounds muffled, distant. Blood pressure 90/70. Narrowing pulse pressure. No. Beck's triad. Hypotension. JVD, muffled heart sounds, cardiac tamponade. The crash had caused bleeding into the pericardial sac. The sac was filling with blood, crushing the heart, preventing it from beating effectively. Hayes had minutes. Code Blue, Evelyn shouted. "Prescott, I need you." The intercom crackled. "I'm in OR. Got Hayes' abdomen open. Active bleeder. If I leave, he dies." Evelyn looked at the monitor. Blood pressure dropping. 80/60, 70/50. There was only one option, pericardiocentesis. She had done it twice. 20 years ago. Both times in helicopters. Both times the patient lived. But she was older now. Her hands not as steady. The procedure deadly if wrong. Dave the orderly stepped forward. "Evelyn, if he dies, you go to prison." Evelyn looked at Hayes. 19. Picture of his girlfriend in his pocket. "If I don't try," she said quietly, "he's dead in 90 seconds. She grabbed the 6-inch needle, poured betadine, called for ultrasound. Sophie positioned the probe. The screen showed dark fluid around the heart. "Nobody move," Evelyn said. The room held its breath. Evelyn closed her eyes, saw the anatomy, the path, the target, felt James's hand on her shoulder, heard his voice. "You got this, babe." She opened her eyes, drove the needle upward, under the sternum, aiming for the left shoulder, advancing slowly. On screen, the needle approached the heart. Sophie whispered, "Too close." "Not yet," Evelyn said. Pop. The pericardium pierced. She pulled back the plunger. Dark blood swirled into the syringe. On the monitor, the heart expanded. Freed. Beep, beep, beep. Blood pressure 100/60. Hayes gasped. Live. And from the back of the room, slow applause began. Bear Kavanaugh was clapping. Then Cooper. Then Miller. Then all of them. 18 wounded soldiers applauding the woman who refused to let them die. Evelyn looked up, saw Bear staring at her, saw recognition in his eyes. The secret was out. But she was too tired to care. By 2 a.m., all 18 soldiers were stable. The ER looked like a war zone. Blood on the floors, torn packaging everywhere, the smell of copper and antiseptic. But everyone was breathing. Evelyn sat at the nurse's station, exhausted, her hands finally still. Bear Kavanaugh walked over, stood in front of her. "Ma'am," he said, "can I ask you a question?" Evelyn looked up, saw the recognition, knew what was coming. "You should rest, Sergeant." "You have a concussion," Fallujah Bear said. "April 2004, Easter offensive." Evelyn went very still. Second platoon, pinned in the market. The medevac came, crashed. Everyone died except the flight medic. The room was listening now. She ran into the fire, Bear continued. Worked on us for 14 hours. Saved 8 of us. We called her Reaper. He pointed at Evelyn. At the scar, at the watch. That was you. Your chief warrant officer, Evelyn Blackwood. Your Reaper. Evelyn looked at him. At the young man she had pulled from hell 20 years ago. Now middle-aged, scarred, but alive. Reaper's dead, she said quietly. Couldn't save the pilot. The pilot, Bear asked. Captain James Blackwood, Evelyn said. Her voice didn't break. 20 years of practice. My husband. The cockpit door jammed. I pulled everyone else out. But the fire, I couldn't reach him. She looked at Bear. I got the medal, the discharge. Then I disappeared. Because I didn't deserve to be Reaper after I let James burn. The silence was absolute. Bear slowly raised his hand. Saluted. We made it home because of you, ma'am. James got you to us. He didn't die for nothing. One by one, the soldiers saluted. All 18 of them. Evelyn stood, straightened her back, and for the first time in 20 years returned the salute. Outside, the blizzard raged. But inside, something had shifted. Reaper had returned. And the hardest fight was still to come. The salute held for 17 seconds. When Evelyn finally lowered her hand, the spell broke. The ER returned to motion. But something fundamental had changed. The panic was gone. The chaos had transformed into purpose. And everyone knew who was really in charge. Evelyn turned away, wiped her eyes quickly. Once. Then back to work. Sophie, she called. Hayes needs transport to OR. That catheter won't hold forever. Already prepping him, Sophie said. Evelyn moved through the remaining wounded, checking each one. Vitals. Dressings. Making sure the impossible had actually happened. They had all survived. By 3 a.m., Evelyn allowed herself one thought that wasn't medical. Fletcher. She hadn't checked on him in 6 hours. Sophie had been pulled into the main ER to help with the 18. Fletcher was alone in the old wing. Vulnerable. She caught Sophie's eye, nodded toward the hallway. Sophie understood. They walked to the medication room. Private conversation. I need you to go back to the old wing, Evelyn said quietly. Check on our patient. Make sure he's stable. I can't leave here yet. Not until the medevacs arrive. Sophie nodded. I'll go now. Thank you, Evelyn said. And Sophie, you did extraordinary work tonight. I learned from the best, Sophie said. She left. Evelyn returned to the ER. Dr. Prescott was at the nurse's station charting. He looked up when she approached. We did it, he said. His voice was quiet. Amazed. All 18? I still don't understand how. You kept moving, Evelyn said. That's how. Prescott shook his head. No, you kept us moving. You led. I just followed. He stood, looked at her directly. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something like respect. I owe you an apology, he said. I thought you were just an old nurse. Past your prime. I was wrong. You weren't wrong, Evelyn said. I am an old nurse, but old doesn't mean useless. Where did you learn all this? Prescott asked. The triage, the procedures, the command presence. Evelyn was quiet. Then different war, different time. Doesn't matter now. It matters, Prescott said. Because what you did tonight, that's what saved them. Not the equipment, not the protocols, you. We saved them, Evelyn corrected. Team effort. But they both knew the truth. The medevac helicopters arrived at 6 a.m., 3 Blackhawks, the familiar sound of rotors cutting through the morning air. Evelyn felt it in her chest, a physical vibration, a memory. She helped load the wounded, gave report to the flight medics, professional, detailed, every patient's status, every intervention, every complication to watch for. Bear was loaded last. His concussion had worsened. He needed a CT scan, possible intracranial bleeding. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, he grabbed Evelyn's hand. Don't disappear again, Chief, he said. The world needs Reaper. The world's moved on, Bear, Evelyn said gently. Then move with it, Bear said. But don't hide. Promise me. Evelyn squeezed his hand. I promise. The last helicopter lifted off at 6:43, banked east, disappeared into the brilliant blue sky. Evelyn stood in the parking lot until she couldn't hear the rotors anymore. Then she turned, walked back inside. She had someone else to check on. She found Sophie in the old wing. Standing outside room 147, the young nurse's face was pale. Evelyn's heart dropped. What's wrong? He's gone, Sophie whispered. Evelyn pushed past her into the room. The bed was empty, IV disconnected. Monitors silent. Fletcher was gone. On the pillow was a note, handwritten. Reaper, had to move. They found the safe house. Colonel Hayes has me. You kept your promise. Thank you. Fletcher Evelyn picked up the note. Read it twice. Her hands were shaking. He was alive. Hayes had him. The mission was complete. But the cut. She had exposed herself, revealed who she was. Hartford would know by now. The whole hospital would know. There was no going back to invisible. Sophie touched her arm. Are you okay? Evelyn looked at the young nurse. No, but I will be. They walked back to the main hospital together. The sun was rising, gold light painting the snow-covered mountains. Beautiful, indifferent. Evelyn made it to the locker room, changed out of her blood-soaked scrubs, into street clothes. She was pulling on her coat when the door opened. Vincent Hartford stood in the doorway. His face was red, shaking with rage. My office. Now Evelyn followed him. Up to the third floor, into his corner office. Hartford slammed the door. Do you have any idea what you've done? He shouted. The remote logs show everything, every unauthorized procedure, the pericardiocentesis, the needle decompressions, the direct blood transfusions without FDA screening. He paced, furious, terrified. I have the state medical board calling me. I have lawyers calling me. I have reporters calling me, asking about the war hero who saved 18 soldiers. Evelyn stood quietly, letting him vent. You are fired, Hartford said. Effective immediately. You will never work in healthcare again. I will personally see to it. And I'm calling the police. What you did is criminal. You practice medicine without a license. You put this entire hospital at risk. He reached for the phone, and the door opened. Dr. Prescott walked in. Didn't knock, just entered. Behind him, Sophie. The two orderlies. 3 nurses, all of them filing into Hartford's office. What is this? Hartford demanded. It's called a walkout, Prescott said calmly. You fire her, we all quit. Every person in this room. Right now, today. Hartford's mouth opened. You can't. You're under contract. Sue us, Prescott said. See how that plays. See what happens when the media finds out you fired the woman who saved 18 soldiers because she broke protocol to keep them alive. Hartford looked around, saw determination in every face. This is ridiculous, he said weakly. There are rules, regulations, liability. There are also lives, Prescott said. 18 of them, all breathing because she stepped up when I couldn't. He stepped closer to Hartford. You're so worried about liability you forgot the mission. We're supposed to save people. That's the job. And she's better at it than anyone in this hospital. Hartford sank into his chair. You don't understand. The board, the lawyers, they'll crucify me. Then maybe you should have different board members, a new voice said. Everyone turned. Bear Kavanaugh stood in the doorway. He shouldn't have been there. Should have been in a helicopter. But he was there, head bandaged, walking with a cane. But there. Sergeant, what are you doing here? Evelyn said. Couldn't leave, Bear said. Not until this was settled. He walked into the office, looked at Hartford. You're worried about lawyers, Bear said. I'm a lawyer, JAG Corps, retired. And I'm telling you right now you have no case. What Chief Blackwood did falls under Good Samaritan protections. Emergency conditions. No other option. Any prosecutor would laugh you out of court. Hartford stared. You're a lawyer 23 years, Bear said. And I'm also the man she saved in Fallujah, and one of the 18 she saved last night. So let me make this very simple for you. He leaned on the desk. You fire her and I will personally make your life hell. I will file complaints with every regulatory board. I will contact every veterans organization. I will make sure your name is synonymous with the bureaucrat who attacked a war hero. Hartford was pale. That's blackmail. No, Bear said. That's consequence. You have a choice. Recognize what she did, honor it, or watch your career implode. The room was silent. Hartford looked at Evelyn, at the staff supporting her, at Bear's unwavering gaze. Perhaps he said slowly, perhaps I was hasty, perhaps under the emergency circumstances, Good Samaritan laws do apply. There were no irregularities, Prescott said firmly, just excellence under impossible conditions. Hartford nodded, yes, excellence. I'll draft a statement, praising the staff's heroic efforts during the blizzard. He looked at Evelyn. You're not fired. Thank you, Evelyn said quietly. Everyone filed out, except Bear. He waited until the door closed. You okay, Chief? He asked. No? Evelyn said honestly, but I will be. What happens now? Evelyn looked out the window, at the mountains, at the world she had been hiding from. I don't know, she said. I can't go back to invisible. Everyone knows now. Good, Bear said, because Reapers shouldn't be invisible. He pulled out his phone, showed her a text from Colonel Hayes. Fletcher safe. Testimony scheduled. Thanks to you, the whole network is going down. Well done, Chief. Evelyn read it, felt something release in her chest. The mission was complete. Fletcher was alive. The conspiracy would be exposed, the corruption would be punished, and she had done it, not by hiding, by stepping into the fire. Thank you, Bear, she said. Don't thank me, Bear said. Thank yourself. You're the one who refused to quit. He left. Evelyn stood alone in Hartford's office, looked at her reflection in the window. She looked old, tired, but her eyes were different, clear, focused, alive. For the first time in 20 years, she looked like someone who remembered who she was. 3 months later, the sign went up. Combat Medic Training Program, Director Evelyn Blackwood, RNCWO RET. The old VA wing had been renovated, cleaned, equipped, transformed from an abandoned space into a state-of-the-art training facility. 20 students sat in the classroom, mix of military and civilian, all eager, all ready to learn from someone who had been there. Evelyn stood at the front, no uniform, no rank insignia, just herself. Welcome, she said. Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to keep people alive when everything is trying to kill them. A young man raised his hand. Ma'am, is it true you served in Iraq? Yes, Evelyn said. Is it true you received the Silver Star? Yes. Is it true you saved 18 soldiers during the blizzard? Evelyn was quiet. Then I helped 18 soldiers survive. I didn't do it alone. Good medicine is never a solo act, a young woman asked. How do you deal with the pressure when one mistake means someone dies? You accept it, Evelyn said. The pressure is real. The stakes are real. If you can't handle that, this isn't the field for you. But if you can accept it, you become capable of extraordinary things. She walked to the whiteboard, picked up a marker. Lesson 1 triage is not about who you can save. It's about who you can't afford to lose. The class leaned forward, notebooks open, and Evelyn began to teach. The weeks passed. The program grew. Veterans came. Civilians came. Word spread. And 6 weeks after the program launched, Evelyn received a call. It was Private Dylan Fletcher. Ma'am, he said, his voice was stronger now, healthier. I testified yesterday. Grand jury indicted 47 people. Congressmen, generals, defense contractors, $2 billion in fraud. It's over. Evelyn closed her eyes. Good, I'm proud of you. I wouldn't be alive without you, Fletcher said. You kept your promise. We all did, Evelyn said. How's Sergeant Kavanaugh? He's good. Actually, he wanted me to tell you something. He's organizing a group. Veterans who feel lost, forgotten. He's calling it The Last Guard. They meet every Thursday at the VA. He wanted to know if you'd come. Be part of it. Evelyn was quiet. Then tell him yes, I'll be there. She hung up, looked at the training center, at the young medics practicing, at the future being built. Then she drove home. The apartment was the same, but different. Not a hiding place anymore. Just a place to rest. She walked to the mantel, to the 4 photographs. The wedding photo, James smiling. The Ranger unit, James's arm around her. The Silver Star ceremony, her face blank. The funeral, alone. She picked up the wedding photo, traced James's face. I did it, she whispered. I stopped running. I'm teaching now, building something that lasts, something you'd be proud of. She set it down, picked up the funeral photo, looked at her younger self, broken, alone. I forgive you, she said to that woman. I forgive you for surviving, for not opening that door, for living when he didn't. She put the photo back and realized the weight had shifted. Still there, but not crushing, carryable. That Thursday, Evelyn walked into the VA, found the meeting room. Bear Kavanaugh was there. 6 other veterans, all ages, all branches, all carrying invisible wounds. Chief Blackwood Bear said, Welcome to the Last Guard. They sat, talked, shared stories, drank terrible coffee. For the first time since James died, Evelyn felt like she belonged. 3 years later, the program had expanded to 12 VA hospitals. 573 medics graduated. They saved lives all over the country, all over the world. And Evelyn kept teaching. Not forever, just long enough to build something that could outlast her. On her 60th birthday, she stood in front of her final class. This is my last class, she said. I'm retiring, passing the torch. The students protested, begged her to stay. But Evelyn smiled, shook her head. I've taught you everything I know. Now it's time for you to teach others. That's how legacy works. Not monuments, not medals. People. Teaching people. Who teach people. Forever. After the ceremony, Bear found her packing her office. "So this is it," he asked. "You're really done." "I'm done teaching," Evelyn said. "Not done living. What's next?" Evelyn looked at the box, at the photographs, at the awards. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe travel, maybe volunteer, maybe just watch the mountains. I've earned the right to not have a plan." "You have," Bear agreed. They stood in comfortable silence. Then Evelyn picked up the box, walked out, down the hallway, into the bright Montana afternoon. Her truck started on the first try. She drove home, not to hide, just to rest, because tomorrow there would be mountains, roads, life, and she was finally ready to live it. That evening, she stood at the mantel one last time, looked at James's photo. "I'm okay now," she whispered. "I found my way back, not to who I was, to who I'm supposed to be." She touched the photo, smiled, then turned away, walked to her porch, sat in the chair, watched the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. Beautiful, eternal. And Evelyn Blackwood, Chief Warrant Officer, retired, the ghost of Ramadi. Reaper. She was finally at peace. The epilogue came not in words but in numbers. Over 6 years, the Combat Medic Training Program trained 847 medics. They served in ambulances, ERs, forward operating bases. They saved thousands of lives. Private Dylan Fletcher became a counterintelligence instructor at Fort Bragg. Visited Evelyn every year. Bear Kavanaugh and the Last Guard expanded to 40 VA hospitals, helping thousands of forgotten veterans find purpose again. Dr. Nathan Prescott became Chief of Surgery, instituted mandatory mass casualty training. Never forgot the night he learned that experience mattered more than credentials. Sophie Daniels became a flight medic, deployed twice, saved countless lives. Always said she learned from the best. Vincent Hartford quietly retired. No one missed him. And Evelyn, she lived quietly, hiked mountains, volunteered at the VA, drank coffee with veterans, told stories, listened. At 64, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, likely from burn exposure in Fallujah. She fought it for 2 years, then decided to stop fighting. On her final day, Bear sat beside her bed. "No regrets, Chief?" he asked. Evelyn smiled. "Weak but genuine. Plenty of regrets, but fewer than if I'd done nothing, than if I'd stayed hidden." She looked at the window, at the mountains. "I got to teach, got to build something that lasts, got to make James's sacrifice mean something." She closed her eyes. "That's enough." Bear held her hand, and Evelyn Blackwood, who had pulled so many from death, went quietly into it. At her funeral, 847 people attended, every medic she had trained, every veteran from the Last Guard, every person whose life had been touched by hers. They didn't cry. They saluted. Because that's what you did for Reaper. You honored her service. You carried her legacy. You kept saving lives. And on her headstone next to James's grave at Arlington, a simple inscription: Evelyn M. Blackwood, Chief Warrant Officer, Flight Medic 1970 to 2034. Nobody dies on my watch. Below it, smaller, she taught 847 medics. They taught thousands more. Her watch never ended.